The wreckage drifted in the void, a graveyard of twisted metal and shattered crystal. The Zapirian salvage vessel Luminous Tide hovered above the debris field, its bioluminescent scanners casting eerie blue-green pulses across the wreckage. The alien crew moved with precise, insectile grace, their crystalline armor refracting the dim starlight as they worked. High Commander Zakel observed from the command spire, his faceted eyes narrowing as the data streamed across the translucent display. This was no ordinary derelict. The ship's design was ancient, its architecture blocky and angular, brutalist in a way that clashed with the flowing organic curves of Zapirian technology. "Human," murmured Quilex, the chief xenobiologist, his voice modulated through the harmonic resonance of his speech organ. "Pre-Exodus era, if the decay patterns are accurate." Zakel's mandibles twitched in distaste. Humans, the galaxy's most unpredictable species, violent, emotional, prone to irrational acts of both cruelty and compassion. The Zapirian Dominion had long since catalogued them as a secondary threat, dangerous in numbers, but too fractured to ever become a true power. Yet this wreck was different. The scans revealed something buried deep within the ruined hull, a faint energy signature, pulsing in slow, rhythmic waves. "A stasis pod. Bring it aboard," Zakel ordered. The retrieval drones hummed as they latched onto the pod, their crystalline manipulators glowing with restrained energy. The pod was massive, far larger than standard human designs, its surface pitted with micrometeorite impacts and radiation burns. It had been adrift for centuries. Quilex's antennae quivered with anticipation as the pod was secured in the examination chamber. The outer casing hissed as the drones peeled it away, revealing a thick layer of cryogenic gel, still semi-solid despite the eons beneath it. A figure lay suspended, a human male, his features locked in frozen stillness. "Remarkable," Quilex breathed. "His cellular degradation is minimal. The stasis field must have been reinforced beyond standard parameters." Zakel studied the human, even in repose. There was something unsettling about him. His musculature was dense, his frame built for endurance rather than speed. Unlike the lithe, segmented forms of the Zapirians, this creature was a solid mass of potential violence. "Revive him," Zakel commanded. Quilex hesitated. "Commander, we have no idea what state his mind will be in. Prolonged stasis can cause neural degradation." "Revive him," Zakel repeated, his tone brooking no argument. The xenobiologist acquiesced, activating the revival sequence. The cryogel shimmered as it dissolved, the stasis field collapsing in a cascade of fading blue light. The human's chest heaved, his eyes snapped open, and the chamber changed. The air itself seemed to thicken, charged with something the Zapirians had no name for. The human's gaze was sharp, too sharp, as if the centuries had not dulled his senses, but honed them. His pupils dilated, adjusting to the light with unnatural speed. Then he moved, before the guards could react. The human was upright, his stance coiled like a predator assessing prey. His breathing was steady, controlled. No disorientation, no panic, only calculation. Zakel felt the first stirrings of unease. This was not the reaction of a being pulled from the brink of death. This was the awakening of something that had been waiting. The human's lips curled into something that was not quite a smile. "Where?" he said, his voice rough with disuse but unmistakably clear. "Are my soldiers?" And in that moment, Zakel realized something terrible. They had not found a relic, they had found a weapon. Section HFY. The forbidden world. The human stood motionless, his bare feet planted on the crystalline floor of the Zapirian containment chamber. The bioluminescent glow of the walls cast eerie blue-green reflections across his scarred skin, making him seem less like a relic of the past and more like a specter carved from the void itself. His eyes, dark, unblinking, scanned the room with a precision that made Quilex's neural frills twitch. The Zapirian scientist had expected confusion, disorientation, perhaps even fear. Instead, the human was measuring them. Zackel's mandibles flexed, his armored carapace shifting as he stepped forward. The containment field hummed between them, its translucent energy barrier pulsing with the rhythmic thrum of Zapirian technology. It should have been impenetrable, yet the way the human's gaze lingered on its edges, as if already tracing its weaknesses, sent a ripple of unease through the commander's neural clusters. Quilex adjusted his scanner, the crystalline device emitting a soft chime as it processed the human's vitals. The readings made no sense. Muscle density far beyond baseline human parameters, neural activity spiking in patterns that suggested hyper-accelerated adaptation. Even his core temperature was wrong, too steady, too controlled, as if his body had recalibrated itself to some unfathomable standard during his long sleep. And then there were the scars, not the marks of battle, but something worse. Deliberate, geometric patterns etched into his flesh. The human's voice cut through the silence again. "You didn't answer me." His tone was calm. Too calm. "Where are my soldiers?" Zackel hesitated. A mistake. The human's nostrils flared, his head tilting slightly, listening. Not just to them, but to the ship itself. The distant thrum of the engines, the vibration of the deck beneath him, the whisper of air through the vents. Quilex realized, too late, what he was doing. "Hess mapping the ship," the scientist hissed, his frills flaring in alarm. The human's lips twitched. A sound. The human's entire body tensed, his focus snapping toward the far wall. His pupils dilated, his breathing stilled. Zackel followed his gaze. Nothing, just the smooth, crystalline surface of the chamber. But the human knew something they didn't. A second later, the alarms blared. Red emergency lights flared to life, their harsh glow clashing with the chamber's serene blue. The containment field flickered. Once, twice. Before stabilizing, Zackel's neural clusters burned with sudden comprehension. The human hadn't just been listening, had been waiting, and whatever he had heard, whatever signal, whatever trigger, had just been activated. Quilex's scanner chimed again, this time in warning. The human's heart rate hadn't spiked. It had slowed. Zackel reached for his sidearm, his carapace plates locking into combat position. The human moved, not toward them, toward the wall. His fist struck the crystalline surface with a force that should have shattered every bone in his hand. Instead, the wall cracked. A spiderweb of fractures radiated outward, glowing with the strain of failing energy conduits. The containment field sputtered, its harmonics destabilizing. The human smiled. It wasn't a smile of triumph. It was the smile of a predator who had just found the weak spot in the herd. Zackel's blood ran cold. They had woken something, and now it was waking up the ship section Fey. The first marked the crack in the wall pulsed like a living wound. Blue-green energy bled from the fractured conduits, sputtering in erratic bursts that cast jagged shadows across the chamber. The human stood framed in that unstable glow, his silhouette too still, too controlled. Quilex's mandibles twitched. The scanner in his grasp had gone silent, its diagnostics frozen mid-alert. The readings made no sense. The human's musculature density was increasing, his cells metabolizing at a rate that should have liquefied his organs. Yet his breathing remained steady, slow, calculated. Zackel's sidearm hummed to life, its crystalline barrel emitting a thin, high-pitched whine as it charged. He didn't fire. Not yet. Protocol demanded restraint with specimens, but his instincts screamed that this was no specimen. This was a threat. The human turned his head, just slightly, just enough to meet Zackel's gaze. His eyes were wrong. The pupils had dilated into black voids, swallowing the iris whole. The sclera, once white, now threaded with faint, luminous veins. Cryo, sickness, mutation, Quilex's theories scattered like brittle husks as the human's lips parted. Interesting architecture. His voice was a graveled rasp, yet it carried an undercurrent of something else. A resonance that vibrated against the ship's bioluminescent walls, making the crystalline panels shiver in response. Zackel's carapace tightened. The human wasn't speaking their language. The translation matrix was working, but the intonation was wrong. Those words hadn't been formed by vocal cords alone. They thrummed with subharmonic frequencies, bleeding into the ship's energy grid like a virus. Quilex stumbled back as his scanner erupted in a flurry of warnings. "Commander, the containment field." The human moved again. Not an attack. A step. His bare foot pressed against the deck, and the floor reacted. The organic plating beneath him darkened, its bioluminescence dimming as if drained. Where he stepped next, the effect spread. A creeping necrosis leaching the energy from the ship's living infrastructure. Zackel fired. The plasma bolt seared through the air, and the human twisted. Precisely, the shot grazed his shoulder, burning cloth and flesh, but the wound sealed within seconds, knitting itself shut with a visible shimmer of heat. The human didn't flinch. He tilted his head, studying the scorch mark on his skin with detached curiosity. Then he looked back at Zackel. "You missed." The ship groaned. Deep in its crystalline heart, something answered. Alarms blared. Not the shrill alerts of breached containment, but the guttural, panicked pulses of a vessel recognizing an intruder in its bloodstream. The lights flickered, then shifted, their usual blue-green hue staining crimson at the edges. Quilex's voice cracked. "He's interfacing with the ship." The human exhaled, a slow, deliberate breath, and the walls breathed with him. Zackel's combat instincts locked into place. This wasn't containment failure. This was awakening, and the ship was choosing sides. Section Fe. Silentium Protocol. The ship shivered. Not the mechanical shudder of failing systems, but something deeper. An organic tremor, like the first twitch of a limb long thought paralyzed. The crystalline walls pulsed, their usual teal luminescence fracturing into jagged streaks of gold and crimson. Energy conduits writhed beneath the translucent panels, their rhythmic flows disrupted by an alien presence. Zackel's claws flexed against the grip of his sidearm. His secondary eyelids flicked sideways, scanning the human's bio-signs. The readings were impossible. The cryopod stasis field should have left the human weakened, his muscles atrophied, his neural pathways sluggish. Instead, his vitals burned brighter than any Zapirian's, synaptic activity flaring like a star caught mid-collapse. The human, Shepard, his name was Shepard, tilted his head, listening to something none of them could hear. His pupils dilated, black swallowing iris, and for a heartbeat, Zackel saw the reflection of the ship's core in them, a pulsing fractal web of light. Quilex's mandibles clicked in frantic alarm. Is not just interfacing, Hez syncing. The scientist's instruments spat corrupted data. The human's nervous system was rewriting itself in real time, adapting to the ship's bioelectric architecture. Synapses fired in patterns that mirrored the vessel's energy flows, his very cells resonating with the crystalline lattice beneath their feet. Shepard exhaled, and the ship exhaled with him. The air tasted metallic. Zackel's combat implants screamed at him to act, but instinct held him still. This wasn't a battle of force. It was something older, something hungry. The human took a step forward. The deck plating flexed under his weight, not yielding, but responding, as if recognizing the pressure of a familiar gait. His bare feet left faint imprints in the luminescent membrane, not scorch marks, but something closer to symbiosis. The ship's organic underlayers rippled where he stepped, blue-green veins brightening in his wake. Quilex's voice was a whisper. Centuries in stasis, and Hez stronger. Shepard's fingers twitched. The overhead lighting array flickered, then dimmed, shadows pooling around him like a cloak. The ship's ambient hum dropped an octave, deepening into a subsonic thrum that vibrated in Zackel's marrow. Or a greeting. The human's lips parted, not to speak, to smile. And the ship's core answered, deep in the heart of the vessel. The primary energy matrix, a swirling orb of liquid crystal, shuddered. Its usual orderly pulses fractured, spiraling into chaotic, luminous tendrils that lashed against containment. The Zapirian crew staggered as gravity fluctuated, their inner ears betraying them. Shepard didn't stumble. He spread his hands. The ship's systems recognized the gesture. Panels slid open, conduits rerouted. The air itself thickened with static, every charged particle aligning to the human's presence. Zakel's combat HUD flickered, then died. His implants went dark, their Zapirian tech rendered inert by the ship's sudden allegiance. The human turned his palm upward, and the ship obeyed. A single command node, a floating orb of condensed energy, detached from the ceiling, drifting into Shepard's waiting grasp. It flared at his touch, its core shifting from teal to a deep, arterial red. Quilex made a sound no Zapirian throat should produce. Shepard closed his fingers around the orb, and the ship woke up. Lights blazed to full intensity, not in their usual soothing gradients, but in a single searing burst. The walls moved, crystalline segments reconfiguring, pathways rewriting themselves in real time. The airlock seals hissed, not as a breach, but as an invitation. Zakel's spine locked. The human wasn't just controlling the ship, he was remaking it. And the Zapirians, they were no longer crew, they were cargo. The ship breathed around them, inhaling, exhaling, its crystalline veins pulsing with a rhythm that no longer matched Zapirian design. The walls hummed, not in the familiar, harmonic resonance of bio-luminescent circuits, but in a deep, shuddering growl, as if the vessel itself had remembered something primal. Zakel's mandibles twitched, his neural relays still scrambling to process the impossibility before him. The human Shepard stood at the heart of the storm, his fingers curled around the command orb like a conqueror gripping the hilt of a stolen sword. The orb's glow had deepened to a furious crimson, its light casting jagged shadows across the chamber, turning the once elegant Zapirian architecture into something jagged, something predatory. Quilex staggered back, his carapace plates flaring in distress. His scientific mind, trained to dissect the universe into orderly equations, shattered against the reality before him. The ship's systems were listening to the human, not just responding, anticipating. A low, reverberating tone shuddered through the deck. The airlock seals cycled again, this time with finality. The Zapirians were no longer in control of their own vessel. Shepard's eyes, still that unsettling, depthless black, flicked toward the nearest console. The crystalline surface rippled at his gaze, its teal interface fracturing into jagged red script. Human script. Zakel's combat instincts screamed at him to act, but his body refused. His limbs felt leaden, his reflexes dulled. The ship's neural dampeners, designed to pacify intruders, had been repurposed, and now they pressed against him like a vice. The human took a step forward. The ship moved with him. Panels shifted underfoot, forming a path where none had existed, the floor reshaping itself into a bridge of jagged glass like spines. The walls peeled back in sections, revealing conduits that pulsed with an unfamiliar energy, thick, dark, and humming with latent violence. Quilex's voice was a whisper. It's rewriting the architecture. Zakel had seen war. He had faced enemies across a dozen star systems. But this was something else. This was not a battle. This was an infection. The human was the virus, and the ship was his host. Shepard's free hand lifted, fingers splayed. The air before him shimmered, then split. A holographic display erupting into existence, not the clean geometric projections of Zapirian tech, but a chaotic sprawl of data, schematics, and flickering status reports. The human's eyes darted across it all, absorbing, commanding. Then he spoke, a single word, in that rough, guttural tongue. The ship answered. Engines that had lain dormant for centuries roared to life, their vibrations shuddering through the hull like the awakening of some slumbering leviathan. The lights dimmed, then flared again, not in the soothing gradients of Zapirian design, but in pulses, like a heartbeat. Zapkel's own pulse hammered in his throat. He had come here to study a relic, to dissect a dead thing. But the dead thing was alive, and it was looking back at him. The human turned his head, just slightly. And for the first time, Zapkel saw something in those black eyes. Not just emptiness, not just calculation. Recognition. Shepard knew what he was doing. And worse, he remembered. The ship shuddered again, a deep, resonant groan echoing through its bones. Somewhere in the depths of the vessel, something ancient and terrible stirred. The storm was coming, and the Zapirians were no longer its masters. They were its prey. Section Fe. The weight of names. The air tasted of ozone and something older, something metallic, like the scent of blood left to dry in forgotten battlefields. The human's breath fogged the cryopod's glass as he exhaled. Slow and deliberate, his dark eyes tracking the flickering Zapirian luminescence, with the precision of a predator counting heartbeats. Sergeant Daniel Shepard. The name hung in the air like a blade unsheathed. Zapkel's mandibles twitched, his neural tendrils pulsing with uneasy energy. The human should have been weak, should have been disoriented, his muscles atrophied, his mind fractured by centuries of frozen silence. Instead, he stood, not with the trembling uncertainty of a creature dragged from death's doorstep, but with the coiled readiness of a soldier who had merely been waiting. His hands, scarred, calloused, flexed once, testing the air as if relearning the weight of gravity. His gaze swept the chamber, lingering on the Zapirian insignia etched into the bulkhead. Recognition. Quilex crystalline datapad chimed, its projections spiraling in frantic arcs. Biometrics are impossible, the scientist murmured, his voice thin. Neural activity exceeds baseline human parameters by 300%. Muscle density suggests prolonged zero-G adaptation, but his ship had artificial gravity. Unless he wasn't just sleeping. Zapkel finished, his own voice hollow. The human's lips curled, not a smile, a baring of teeth. The ship groaned around them. A sound like bones settling. The lights pulsed again, and this time, the rhythm matched the thrum of Shepard's pulse in his throat. The Indomitable wasn't just awake, it was listening. Shepard took a step forward. The Zapirians flinched, an instinctive recoil, their bioluminescent markings flaring in alarm. His boots clicked against the deck, the sound too loud in the trembling silence. He reached out, fingers brushing the wall. The ship's systems responded instantly, panels lighting beneath his touch in jagged crimson streaks. Zapkel's breath caught. The human wasn't just a passenger. He was keyed to the vessel. Shepard's voice, when it came, was rough with disuse, but razor sharp. You shouldn't have woken me. The words weren't a warning. They were an epitaph. Outside, in the void, the Indomitable's weapons array cycled online with a sound like 1,000 swords being drawn at once. The storm had arrived, and its name was Vengeance. Section Fe. The first strike, the Indomitable exhaled. It was the only way to describe the sound. A deep, resonant shudder that rippled through the crystalline corridors of the Zapirian research vessel, vibrating through the deck plates and into the bones of every being aboard. The human warship didn't just move, it uncoiled, its massive frame twisting in the void with predatory grace. The Zapirians had seen dreadnoughts before, sleek, geometric constructs of living crystal and pulsing energy. But this was something else. This was a beast. Zapkel's mandibles twitched, his bioluminescent markings flickering in erratic bursts of teal and silver. His tactical training screamed at him to act, to raise shields, to call for reinforcements, but his body refused to obey. The sheer wrongness of the human vessel paralyzed him. It shouldn't have been able to maneuver like that. It shouldn't have been able to breathe. Yet there it was. The Indomitable's hull plates shifted, sliding over one another with a sound like grinding teeth, revealing rows of weapon ports that glowed a dull, ominous red. Not the clean geometric energy projectors of Zapirian design. These were brutal, asymmetrical things, their apertures jagged and uneven, as if they'd been torn open rather than engineered. Quilek's datapad chimed, a shrill, panicked alert. His trembling fingers fumbled over the crystalline surface, the readout spilling across the translucent screen in frantic waves. His voice, when it came, was barely a whisper. "Those aren't plasma lances." Zackle didn't look away from the viewport. What? Quilek's frills flattened against his skull. "The energy signatures. They're not coherent beams. They're projectiles. Hyper-accelerated slugs. The humans are." He swallowed. "They're firing metal at us." A beat of silence. Then the Indomitable struck. The first shot wasn't a clean, surgical lance of energy. It was a punch. A kinetic impact, so violent it sent shockwaves through the Zapirian vessel's structural lattice. The crystalline plating along the starboard flank splintered, spiderweb fractures racing outward as the projectile buried itself deep within the ship's core. Alarms shrieked, their tones sharp and discordant, the Zapirian equivalent of a scream. Zackle staggered, his claws digging into the command console for balance. His mind reeled. This wasn't warfare as he understood it. This wasn't the elegant dance of energy shields and precision strikes. This was brutality. The humans hadn't just bypassed their defenses. They'd ignored them, treating the Zapirian vessel's advanced shielding like an afterthought. And Shepard hadn't moved. He stood at the center of the chaos, his back to the viewport, his expression unreadable. The crimson glow of the Indomitable's weapon discharges painted his face in stark relief, carving shadows beneath his eyes that made him look less like a man and more like something carved from the void itself. Zackle's frills trembled. The human wasn't giving orders. He wasn't even watching. He didn't have to. The Indomitable knew what to do. Another impact rocked the ship, this one closer, harder. The deck bucked beneath them, throwing Quilek to his knees. His data pad clattered to the floor, the screen shattering into 1,000 glittering fragments. Somewhere deep within the vessel, something ruptured. The sound a wet, organic crunch that set Zackle's teeth on edge. The humans hadn't just built a warship, they'd built a predator, and it was hungry. The Indomitable did not fight like a warship. It fought like a living thing, a beast of cold metal and calculated fury. Its movements too fluid, too intentional to be mere machinery. Every pulse of its thrusters was a predator's lunge. Every weapon's discharge was the snap of jaws. And it was learning. Zackle's frills clamped tight against his skull as the human vessel adjusted its tactics in real time, its targeting algorithms refining with each passing second. The first volleys had been brute force, overwhelming firepower meant to shatter shields and cripple engines. But now, the strikes were surgical. The Indomitable's railguns hammered at the Zapirian vessel's crystalline power conduits, its plasma lances carving precise molten lines through bioluminescent armor. It wasn't just destroying, it was dissecting. Quilek scrambled to his feet, his claws scraping against the deck as another impact sent tremors through the ship. His voice was a thin, reedy thing, barely audible over the groaning of stressed hull plating. The energy readings. Zackle didn't need the scientist's analysis. He could see it for himself. The human warship's power signature wasn't fluctuating. It wasn't straining under the weight of its own firepower. It was growing stronger. A cold realization settled in his gut. The Indomitable wasn't just built to endure battle, it was built to thrive in it. Its reactors fed off the chaos, its systems adapting, evolving, turning every exchange into fuel for the next assault. And Shepard still hadn't moved. The human stood like a statue, his gaze fixed on some distant point beyond the viewport, his expression unreadable. The crimson glow of destruction painted his face in stark relief, carving hollows beneath his eyes that made him look less like a man and more like something carved from the void itself. Zackle's frills trembled. This wasn't command. This wasn't even war. This was something older, something primordial. The Zapirian commander had seen battle before, had led fleets against rebels and rival species, had watched as ships shattered under the weight of superior firepower. But this was different. The humans hadn't just built a weapon. They had built vengeance given form. A machine that didn't just fight but remembered, that didn't just destroy but punished. And it was only just beginning. Deep within the ship, something screamed, a sound like rending metal and dying light. The deck lurched violently, throwing Zapple against the command console. Alarms wailed, their shrill cries cutting through the chaos like knives. Quilek's voice was barely a whisper. There inside. Zapple didn't need to ask who. The Indomitable hadn't just come to kill them. It had come to take them. And as the first boarding drones tore through the hull, their monomolecular blades humming with lethal intent, Zapple understood one terrible truth. Mercy had never been an option. Section Fae. The Accord's secret. The Indomitable's boarding drones moved like living shadows through the Zapirian vessel's crystalline corridors, their forms flickering in and out of visibility as they phased through bulkheads and dissolved security barriers with viral precision. The ship's bioluminescent emergency lighting pulsed erratically, casting jagged blue-green reflections across the fractured walls, light bending unnaturally where the drones passed, as if reality itself recoiled from their presence. Zapple staggered upright, his carapace aching from the impact. The command deck was a ruin of shattered crystalline panels, their organic circuitry spasming with dying energy. His secondary arms twitched involuntarily, a physiological response to the pheromonal terror saturating the air. His crew's fear, thick and cloying, like the scent of ozone before a storm. Quilek was hunched over a flickering holodisplay, his manipulator digits trembling as they sifted through fragmented data. The drones, they're not just breaching, he hissed. They're learning, adapting to our tech faster than we can lock them out. Zapple didn't respond. His attention was fixed on the central viewport, where the Indomitable loomed like a specter, its armored hull, pitted and scarred from centuries of forgotten wars, drank in the starlight, refusing to reflect it. That alone was wrong. All civilized species built their ships to shine, to declare their presence. Humans built theirs to swallow light. A new alert blared, a proximity warning. Something was approaching from the ventral cargo bay, not drones. Something heavier, Sergeant Daniel Shepard's boots crunched over the remnants of a Zapirian security barricade, the crystalline shards fracturing into prismatic dust beneath his weight. His HUD flickered, adjusting to the alien ship's energy signatures, translucent walls thrumming with bioelectric currents, hexagonal conduits pulsing like veins. The air tasted metallic, tinged with the acrid bite of ionized plasma. Behind him, the rest of his squad moved in perfect silence, their armored forms blending into the shifting shadows. They had trained for this, not just for combat, but for infiltration. The Zapirians had scanned their ships, their weapons, their tactics, but they had never scanned this. The quiet precision of human hunters moving through the dark. A shape stirred in the corridor ahead, a Zapirian soldier, his carapace glistening with defensive biogel, his weapon humming with unstable energy. Shepard didn't hesitate. His neural interface flared, and his rifle snapped up. Firing a single hypersonic round, the Zapirian collapsed, his thoracic plating spider webbed with cracks, his limbs twitching in reflexive death throes. No alarm sounded. No reinforcements came. The Indomitable had already seen to that. Zapple's mandibles clenched as the first human soldier stepped onto the command deck. The figure was encased in matte, black armor, its surface etched with scars that didn't look accidental. They looked ritualistic. A history of violence worn like a badge. The human's helmet retracted with a hiss, revealing a face that should not have existed. Commander Elizabeth Woods' eyes were old, not just aged, ancient. The cryo-sleep had preserved her body, but something in the void between stars had hollowed her gaze into something sharper, colder. She looked at Zapple the way a glacier regards a pebble, You woke us, she said, her voice quiet measured. You shouldn't have done that. Quilix made a strangled noise, his bioluminescent markings flickering in distress. The cryostasis, it was supposed to degrade neural functions over time. It was supposed to make you weak. Wood's lips curled. Not a smile, a predator baring teeth. You don't understand, she murmured. We didn't sleep. We dreamed. And in the silence that followed, Zapkal realized the truth. The Indomitable wasn't just a ship. It was a grave, and the dead had just begun to rise. The air in the Zapirian command chamber tasted of ozone and dread. The crystalline walls, usually alive with pulsing blue-green energy, now flickered erratically, as if the ship itself recoiled from the presence of the humans. Zapkal's mandibles twitched, his instincts screaming at him to retreat, to seal the chamber and purge the entire sector. But he was a high commander. He did not flee. Wood stood motionless, her armor still bearing the scars of centuries, blackened plasma burns, the faint etchings of forgotten battles. The other humans, Shepard and the rest, had fanned out behind her, their movements precise, predatory. They didn't brandish weapons, they didn't need to. Their silence was threat enough. Quilix data. Pad trembled in his grasp, its holographic readouts casting jagged shadows across his face. His earlier fascination had curdled into something darker. The scans didn't lie, the human's neural activity wasn't degraded. It was amplified. Synaptic pathways reforged in the abyss of cryo-sleep. Their minds honed by centuries of dreaming. Dreaming of what? He didn't dare ask. Woods tilted her head, studying the Zapirian commander with those hollow, ancient eyes. You thought we'd be docile, she said, her voice a whisper of razors, a relic to dissect. Zapkal forced his spines to remain rigid. We sought knowledge, a flicker of something, amusement, pity, passed over her face. You found it. Outside the viewports, the void churned. The Indomitable loomed like a specter, its hull a patchwork of scars and fresh welds, its engines humming a dirge only the humans seemed to hear. The Zapirian fleet, pristine in their crystalline formations, looked fragile by comparison. Shepard stepped forward, his gauntleted fingers flexing. You've got a choice, he said, his voice rough with disuse. Stand down. Or learn why we were put on ice in the first place. Quilex's bioluminescence dimmed. You were a weapon. Woods exhaled, slow and deliberate. No, she corrected. We were the last resort. A shudder ran through the ship. The Zapirian scanners wailed as the Indomitable systems flared to life, its reactors burning with a fury that defied known physics. The humans didn't move, didn't flinch. They had waited centuries for this moment, and now, the storm was here. The Indomitable's reactors pulsed like a waking beast, their deep rhythmic thrum resonating through the crystalline decks of the Zapirian flagship. The alien architecture, so pristine, so fragile, trembled under the weight of human engineering. Commander Elizabeth Woods stood motionless, her gaze locked with Zapkal's. The alien commander's bioluminescent veins flickered erratically, betraying the chaos beneath his composed exterior. Quilex's tendrils coiled tight against his thorax, his crystalline carapace reflecting the eerie blue-green glow of the ship's failing energy cores. His mind raced, reassembling the pieces of the puzzle they had so carelessly dismissed. The humans had not been relics. They had been seeds, buried deep, waiting for the moment when the galaxy would need fire instead of light. Sergeant Shepard took a single step forward, the servos in his armor whining softly. His presence alone was a weapon. Centuries of cryo. Sleep had not dulled his instincts, only honed them into something sharper, something hungry. The Zapirians had expected atrophy. Instead, they found a predator who had waited lifetimes to bare his teeth. Outside, the void twisted. The Indomitable's railgun arrays cycled online, their barrels humming with pent-up kinetic fury. The Zapirian fleet's perfect geometric formations wavered, their crystalline hulls catching the reflected glare of human weaponry like frightened prey caught in torchlight. Zakel's mandibles twitched. You would burn the stars to make your point. Woods didn't blink. We already did. A holographic projection flickered between them, an ancient star map, its edges frayed with time. A single system pulsed red, its name etched in a dead human dialect. Quilex recognized it instantly. Sol, the graveyard of the First War. The Zapirians had records of it, scattered, half erased. A cautionary tale of a species that refused to die quietly. Shepard's voice was a blade. You think you're the first to try and break us. The Indomitable's engines roared. The ship wasn't just moving, it was unfolding, its armored plates shifting like the scales of some primordial leviathan. The Zapirian scanners screamed as they registered the truth. This was no mere warship. It was a tomb, a monument, a promise, and its crew had woken to collect. Quilex's bioluminescence dimmed to a sickly pallor. You were never meant to be found. Woods smiled. It wasn't cruel, it wasn't kind. It was the smile of a woman who had outlived empires. And yet, she said softly, here we are. The choice hung in the air, heavier than gravity. The storm had come, and the Zapirians had nowhere left to run. The Indomitable hung in the void, like a specter, its hull still thrumming with the echoes of its awakening. The Zapirian fleet, once a glittering armada of crystalline might, now drifted in fractured formations, their bioluminescent cores flickering erratically. The battle had been swift, brutal, a surgical strike that left no room for doubt. Commander Elizabeth Wood stood at the center of the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back. The glow of the holographic displays cast her in shifting hues of blue and silver, painting her face in the same cold light that had once illuminated the Zapirian command chambers. She did not gloat. She did not sneer. She simply watched, her expression unreadable, as the last of the alien warships powered down their weapons. Zakel's ship, the Luminous Will, was adrift. Its crystalline spires cracked, its energy signatures sputtering. The High Commander had been silent since the final volley, since the moment the Indomitable had torn through their formations like a blade through silk. Now his image flickered on the view screen, his bioluminescent markings dimmed in defeat. Woods exhaled, long and slow. Open a channel. The comm hissed to life. Static. Then, Zakel's voice, strained but steady. You have won. Human. Shepard, standing at her side, tensed. His fingers twitched toward the sidearm at his hip, but Woods raised a hand. A silent command, wait. We have, she agreed. No triumph, no mockery. Just fact. The Zapirian commander's mandibles flexed, his compound eyes reflecting the fractured light of his dying ship. What now? Will you finish what you began? The question hung between them, heavy with the weight of history, the First War, the graveyard of soul. The centuries of silence, the Zapirians had come expecting a relic, a ghost. Instead, they had found a storm. Woods turned her gaze to the starfield beyond the view screen. Somewhere out there in the black was Earth, but not forgotten. No, she said at last. The word landed like a hammer. Shepard's breath caught. Even Quilex, still hunched over the scanner console, froze. Zakel's spines twitched. No. Woods turned back to the screen. You came here thinking we were weak. That time had eroded us. You were wrong. She stepped forward, the light catching the scars along her jawline. Old wounds, older than the ship around her. But we are not you. Then, slowly, the Indomitable's weapons powered down. The targeting arrays dimmed. The railguns retracted. Shepard's voice was barely a whisper. Commander, I know, she said without looking at him. I remember. And she did. Every scream, every death, every burning ship. But this was not vengeance. This was choice. Zakel's mandibles parted, then closed. His bioluminescence pulsed once, uncertain. You would spare us. Woods smiled. Not the cold, knowing smile of before. Something quieter, something human. Call it mercy, she said. Call it a lesson, but leave and tell the rest of your kind what you found here. The channel closed. The Indomitable held its position, a silent sentinel in the dark, and for the first time in centuries, the Zapirians learned what it meant to face humanity and live. The silence that followed was not the quiet of surrender, nor the stillness of defeat. It was the heavy, breathless pause of a universe holding its breath. The Indomitable did not move. Its weapons remained dormant, its shields humming at standby, but its presence was no less terrifying for its stillness. It loomed against the void, a relic of an age the Zapirians had thought long buried. Yet here it was, alive, awake, and watching. Zachel's command chamber flickered with uneasy light. The crystalline panels lining the walls pulsed erratically, betraying the disarray of his thoughts. His mandibles twitched, the bioluminescent veins beneath his chitin dimming and flaring in erratic bursts. He had expected annihilation. He had prepared for it. This was worse. Quilex stood frozen beside him, his delicate sensory frills trembling. The data streams scrolling across his display were meaningless. Now all calculations, all predictions, had been rendered obsolete the moment the human commander had spoken that single, impossible word, mercy. The Zapirian armada hung in space, their formation still locked in battle readiness, their weapons primed, but no order came, no command to fire, no retreat, only silence, and the Indomitable waited. Shepard exhaled slowly, his fingers flexing around the grip of his rifle. His muscles ached with the tension of a fight that had never come. He had been ready, they all had. Centuries of rage, of loss, of vengeance deferred. It should have been unleashed in a storm of fire and ruin, but Woods had stayed their hand. And now, as he watched the alien fleet through the tactical display, he understood why. This was not forgiveness. This was a message. We could have destroyed you. We chose not to. The realization settled over him like a weight. The Zapirians would carry this moment back to their people. They would speak of the ancient warship that had emerged from the dark, its guns silent, its wrath withheld. They would tell of the humans who had looked upon their enemy and shown restraint. And that, Shepard knew, would terrify them more than any battle ever could. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Wood stood motionless, her gaze fixed on the view screen. The scars along her jaw caught the dim light, pale against her skin. She had expected to feel something, triumph, perhaps, or the cold satisfaction of justice served. Instead, there was only quiet, and the knowledge that the war was not over. It never would be. The Zapirians would return. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. And when they did, they would remember this moment. They would remember the ship that had spared them, and they would hesitate. Woods allowed herself a small, tired smile. That was enough. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. The Indomitable remained, a sentinel in the dark, and the 1,000 ships of vengeance waited.